If you're looking for a video called Everything Wrong with Spider-Man Homecoming by CinemaSins, I'm afraid to inform you that it currently doesn't exist. If you're watching this in the future and CinemaSins has posted such a video, I'll link the video on screen now. The YouTube video used in this YouTube video has been linked below. I do not own it, but it's being used under fair use for the purposes of review. So today, I've decided to poke holes in this video. It's from a channel called RNS Entertainment, and it's called 5 Things Wrong with the Spider-Man Homecoming Trailer. That's right, not the movie, just the trailer. It's not hugely similar to CinemaSins, but I still wanted to talk about it, so I'm going to. I'm going to be tackling this video slightly differently to the way I normally do it, because a lot of this video's problems really just merge together into one big problem, so I think putting a number on it would be completely arbitrary. Although then again, I do think the number is arbitrary in other videos as well. It's not like the number has ever actually meant anything. But that aside, let's get into it. Let's have a look at this video.
What's up guys, Roman from RNS Entertainment here, and the Spider-Man Homecoming trailer has dropped. Now, I'm not going to do a trailer reaction video where I fake a nerdgasm all over the keyboard for money, and I'm also not going to do a trailer breakdown where I overanalyze every pointless scene thrown in there.
Okay, so we start with an intro, which is perfectly reasonable. That's a good thing to start with. Well done, you got that right. I feel like I'm being patronizing. This guy, who I'm just going to call RNS because that's the name of his channel, does start with a pretty condescending intro where he basically just says, I'm better than all this other YouTube content, and well, although I don't really like those other kinds of YouTube content, there's no real need to be a dick about it. And that phrase, the words, there's no reason to really be a dick about it, is basically the problem with this whole video. At this point, I would like to say if you like that kind of video, that's fine. But I would like to talk about why I don't like it, and why I think the dislike bar is so high.
Number 1. Marvel thinks Peter Parker is Miles Morales.
Okay, so the first problem he sees with the Spider-Man Homecoming trailer is the one I'm finding hardest to nitpick. Although that being said, I still don't think it's a valid issue that he has with it. He talks about Spider-Man Homecoming borrowing material from another line of Spider-Man comics in which the mantle of Spider-Man has not been taken by Peter Parker, but instead someone called Miles Morales. I'm not the biggest comic book fan in the world, so before seeing this I didn't know about that character. But I would like to say this. I don't care. I watched Spider-Man Homecoming in the theatre and I really enjoyed it. And if it borrowed elements from various different places, I'm personally glad of that because it resulted in the movie that I really enjoyed. The MCU is its own continuity, and I don't mind if they borrow from other places to make it. It's its own thing, and I personally think it should be treated as such. In my eyes, it should exist as its own movies rather than just an extension of the comics. And I'm fine if you're disappointed by the fact that they're not more similar or more faithful to the comics, but saying it's a bad movie because it's not faithful to the comics, which he does do by the way, comes across as fairly comic book reader elitist, and more importantly, completely unnecessary.
And I know the movies love Ultimate Comics. They love Ultimate Spider-Man because it gives them a chance to ignore continuity and characterization. Basically, they can just take elements from the Ultimate Universe and be like, hey, look, that's in a comic, when it didn't ever really happen in Spider-Man's main continuity.
Yeah, they can, because they're building their own new continuity.
Now, nothing against Ultimate Spider-Man in the comics. I love how they portrayed both Peter Parker and Miles Morales in that series. I've actually covered Miles Morales' origin in the first little arc he was in an episode of Comic History, which you can check out by going to the Comic History playlist on my channel.
Self-promo, which by the way is something I do in my Suicide Squad Sin Sins video, so if you want to go check that out. Oh, look at this. A transition that looks like it was lifted straight out of PowerPoint 2005.
So the second thing wrong with this Spider-Man Homecoming trailer is something that's been wrong with the MCU Spider-Man from the get-go. The fucking costume design. Now, I hate this costume. I hate it so much. It doesn't look anything like Spider-Man. It's more like Deadpool than Spider-Man. Like, Spider-Man does not have black bands wrapped around his arms and chest and randomly inserted around his costume.
That's the only reason he gives, that it looks more like Deadpool than Spider-Man. It has some black on it. I mean, at this point, I'm getting the impression that if this wasn't just an exact panel-for-panel recreation of a comic book, that you wouldn't have been happy with this. Which it wasn't, and you weren't. So everything stacks up in my favor so far. Yay! And that seems to be the only problem you've given so far. This portrayal of Spider-Man deviates from the comics. If this was how Spider-Man was in the original comics, if this is always how Spider-Man had been portrayed, would you have been happy with this movie then? Because I'm kind of getting the impression that you would be. But if you're happy with a change as big as, well, this one, then why aren't you happy with this one? Is it because it just happened in a movie first? You've not said anything about how this is worse than other portrayals. You've just said, this is different and I don't like it. You make an attempt later by comparing Spider-Man to Iron Man, by saying that by teching Spider-Man up, you're making him too similar to Iron Man, and we already have Iron Man, so we don't need Spider-Man to be more like Iron Man. To which I would say, first of all, the character is still completely different, and to me personally, that's the important thing. But let's say it's not the important thing. Let's say the important thing to you is the way they fight, the way they conquer bad guys. Spider-Man's style of heroics is still completely different to Iron Man's. Granted, you can't tell that from the trailer, but then again, you can't tell that from the trailer. Why are you ranting about this based on just the trailer when you can't tell?
Also, why the fuck is the spider so small? Why the fuck do the eyes have little fucking visors that are like definitely Stark tech, by the way?
I mean, yes, they are. Tony Stark made the suit. Have you not seen Civil War?
And talking about the costume design and the overly technical bits kind of leads us into number 3 on the list.
It doesn't.
Robert Downey Jr. phoning in another half-assed performance as Iron Man.
Okay, so this one is also very much an opinion. Now, I don't see anything wrong with opinions. This entire video is basically an opinion piece. But you seem to be getting kind of angry about the fact that you personally don't like Robert Downey Jr.'s performance in this. Having seen the movie, I can say that there wasn't really much objectively bad about the performance. I definitely believed the character. Whether or not you like Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of Iron Man is another matter. But yeah, this is definitely an opinion. Having an opinion isn't a bad thing, although getting angry about it can be. But it does get worse.
Like, way to take a decent actor, Hollywood, and put him into the same role over and over and over so many times that he could not care fucking less about even attempting to act. Like, it's just the same tired spiel over and over and over.
Okay, so let's say you're completely right. Let's say that Robert Downey Jr. is tired of playing Iron Man and he's only doing it for the money, or whatever. And as a result of that, he's not giving good performances. What do you want anyone other than Robert Downey Jr. to do about this? You seem to be blaming Hollywood, but it's really not Hollywood's fault if it's happening at all. It's not as if they could easily recast him, and it's not as if he was a bad casting choice in the first place.
So on to number 4. Vulture McBad Guy. Now, this is the most stereotypical design for a movie villain I could ever imagine, and Marvel is shit at villains anyway. But Jesus fuck, they ripped off the coat from Bane in The Dark Knight Returns. Ah
yes, what an outrage. This villain is wearing a brown leather coat with a furry hood. And once, a different villain wore a brown leather coat with a furry hood. What the fuck? Disgraceful. When choosing a villain's coat, they should always go back. And just check all other villains of all time to make sure that no other villains have worn a similar coat. Why do they not do this? I don't fucking know. It's madness. That said, I do agree that the visual design of the Vulture is fairly generic, and I'm not disagreeing with that.
They ripped off the goblin tech from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies to make the fucking wings and like the robotic parts of the suit. Literally looks exactly like that. It's as if Marvel doesn't know their own characters. Or better yet, they don't care. They're not even trying anymore. They're not trying to adequately represent these characters. They're not trying to bring comic books to life. They're trying to rake in money.
By making good films.
And on top of that, Michael Keaton just starred in Birdman, which is definitely why they chose him for this role. They just saw, oh look, feathers. Let's cast him as another person, like with wings or feathers, like a bird-themed person. And moving on to number 5 in our list of why this trailer sucks. Young May.
It's different from the comics!
Every goddamn thing in this trailer. This was awful. And I really wanted this to be good, guys.
You did? Because it seems to me like you're finding every reason you possibly can to hate it. The suit looks different. There aren't enough wrinkles on this side character. Also, can we take some time to point out the, image you've been using most of this time? Okay, so we've got this promotional image from Spider-Man Homecoming. Actually, no, never mind. That looks more like a screenshot from the trailer because you've got loads of motion blur on it. As a background, that's fine. But then you've got this fucking 2005 level word art on it with these, beautiful gradients in them. And then you've got the Spider-Man Homecoming logo very poorly photoshopped onto the image. Look, you even forgot to edit the blue out of the O hole. Anyway, I think that really wraps up what I find to be the problems with this video. Please let me know in the comments if you prefer or don't prefer this kind of content to what I normally do. Remember, your feedback really helps me to make better content. And ideally, that's what I want to do. I hope you enjoyed this. Goodbye.